Hey guys, it's Dan with Create Minis, and today I'm going to be painting a commander for Star Wars Legion that requires 10 different types of paint. Now, who could possibly require 10 different colors of paint? None other than Sabine Wren. Sabine Wren is an operative expansion. Yes, an operative. I get it. She's not a commander. I was catching paint, okay? Anyways, she's an operative expansion for the rebels in Star Wars Legion. She comes with both two options for armaments and head options. I'm going to be choosing the helmeted version along with the Darksaber, because why would you equip a pistol when you can equip a Darksaber? Start out per usual by cleaning the mold lines off of the models. Take care to remove the mold line from the top of the helmet, as it becomes painfully obvious when you apply paint to it. Now I place the helmet on something easy to paint with. For this, I use a toothpick stuck into a piece of cork. Then I begin to glue the remainder of the model. This model is pretty easy to paint with a dynamic pose, so I glue all of the parts ahead of time, except for the head and the jetpack. Now with everything cleaned and glued, it's time to prime, and for this, I use Krylon's 2x flat white primer. Now you can use any primer that you want. I find that this one has pretty good coverage, and it's a lot cheaper than your hobby store brand type paints. Starting with the jetpack quick, we'll just throw a coat of purple on it. Take a nice even coat, and we'll set it to the side. Now let's move on to the helmet. Get ready, it's going to get tricky fast. We start out with sky gray. We're going to paint the lower half of the helmet here. Now for the top half of the helmet, my base coat will consist of orange-brown. This will require multiple thin coats, as you want a nice, even shade all the way across the helmet. After we've achieved that, we're going to go with black now to pencil in some of the detailing and do the striping on the front of the helmet. Now for the stripe on the front here, there's like a ridge on the helmet that runs at like a 45-degree angle. Don't worry if your stripe is a little wide here, you're going to end up framing it in with the other colors after this. Now we're going to add in this deep red color. For this, I took red and mixed just a touch of German gray to darken it up. Now don't do too much or you'll end up making a red gray, but instead you just want your red to have a darker tone to it, almost like a maroon hue. Now this is your chance to frame in the top side of that black stripe. You're going to take the side of your brush and only hit the raised edge of the helmet here, creating a nice clean line. In order to really clean it up, make sure you catch the inside of the ridge here along what would be the nose-mouth area. And now go back with your sky gray and clean up the bottom side of the stripe. Here, I've also cut off the edges on the back to give it a little more clean look. Now for the designs on the top of the helmet. Now Sabine's helmet changes season to season. I, for one, chose the art style similar to the one on the box. Now the details are a little bit more intricate than what I'm going for here. I'm going for more of a tabletop quality. Now, I'm not winning any golden demons with this, but I guarantee you, from 5 feet away looking at the table, this is going to look great. Start out with purple. We're going to base in the wing type pattern on her helmet. Make 2 vertical lines and see how symmetrical you made it. As you can tell here, I needed to work on it. I put down the first lines and then realized that I was way off center. So, take your brush and make the corrections needed. After you've established your 2 vertical lines, start bringing them up the helmet. Now, give it a little bit of a curved look as we're going to give it a wingtip look in the back. So, with that done, you can start filling in the color on the side of the helmet. Now, keeping a fine point on your brush, try and make it flare out a little bit like the tip of a wing towards the top of the helmet. On the sides, we're going to come in with the 2 feather-like shapes. Something simple, not overly complex, but also gives it the look of a wing. Once completed, color it all in with the base color purple. The side with the rangefinder actually helps us out a little bit. While trying to make it perfectly symmetrical, it can be tough, but using the rangefinder to help break up the design a little bit, you can kind of cheat it by putting some wing points on the other side of it, making it look like the design goes through that area. Alternating between the purple and the orange-brown base colors that you've got down, now is the time to clean up all of your lines. Try and make them as symmetrical as possible, and don't be afraid to keep layering the two colors nice and thin on top of each other to clean up all of the edges. I did this multiple times to try and get a cleaner look. Now we take that deep red color that we created and we're going to add a little bit of a triangle type pattern on the front along with a tiny dash behind it simulating the broken pattern on her helmet. After that, we're going to go back to our sky gray, and we're going to use that to outline the pattern. Now, try and make the line as thin as possible, but what we'll do here is after we outline it, we'll go back to our dark red and fill it in a little bit more to make that outline even thinner. On the back side, I'm not trying to outline the entire part. The design is so small that if I were to completely outline it, it would look extremely cluttered and kind of blend all the colors together. So instead, I put a little line on the back side just to add a little bit of character. Now I'm taking the orange-brown and coloring the little items on the sides of the helmet, including the one underneath the rangefinder. Then I took a little bit of creative liberties here and chose to color the brim on the backside of the helmet black. I think it creates some contrast and splits up the colors nicely. Like I said, I'm not trying to win awards with this helmet, but overall it looks pretty good. Finish it up by coloring in the rangefinder, and for this I'm using German Gray. And with that, I'm pretty happy with the helmet, so I'm going to set it aside and start working on the rest of the model. To start, I'm going to color in the entire bodysuit black. When coloring in the arms, don't worry about getting paint on areas you're not supposed to, just make sure you get the paint all the way into the indentions between the gauntlets and the gloves. Cover the gun and gloves in black as well. Now we're moving on to her belt and holsters, and for this I'm going to be using chocolate brown. Again, you don't have to be perfect here as you're going to be framing it in with other colors, so just make sure you get a nice even coat, and if you need to go back for a second, do so. Now color in the center of the bandoliers around her boots here. You don't need to paint the entire thing, but just a nice even coverage throughout the middle. Now I added just a little bit of white to the chocolate brown to lighten it up a hue. Paint this on the majority of her pants. Now for the inside pattern on her pants, I use Rakarth Flesh from Citadel. This is where you're going to begin getting your clean lines and framing in your work. Take your time and make sure you have nice clean lines separating the darker chocolate brown color you painted and the flesh color you're painting now. Now I frame in the bottom of the pants by taking black and painting the straps that would hold on her knee pads. After that, I use the same black to color in the backsides of the boots. Avoid coloring the armor plates on the front as we're going to make those purple in the next step. Now take your purple and color in the plates. When painting the armor plates, make sure you put purple along the sides of them. They are a little bit thick and it adds a little more depth and separation to the black. Now we're going to add the effect of having little bullets in these bandoliers by taking lead belcher and painting the top and bottom portions of it. Once painted and dry, take your chocolate brown and clean up the edges, making a nice tight line all the way around. Now I'm going back to the sky gray, and I use this to color in a base coat on the knee pads. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but this is the layer that all of your color will be going on. Use this to kind of frame in the details of the knee pad itself. Now, after allowing ample drying time for all these colors, we're going to be taking Agrex Earthshade and washing the entire lower half of the model. After covering the entire model evenly, look for spots that it may be pooling up unnaturally. Any little cracks or indents that might be getting caught in, or flat surfaces where it's puddling up. Use your brush to wick this away. You don't want any big stains when you're done. Now we're going to channel our inner Sabine and throw some paint at the armor. For this I'll use an old piece of sponge. Take the red paint and dab it off until it starts to dry up just a little bit. Then dab it randomly across the different parts of armor from the boots up to the knee pads. As you can see, this will give it a nice random paint splatter effect. Then, take your little paintbrush, and on the knee pad, using a stippling effect, add red. You want to cover a good majority of it, but leave some of the corners and edges exposed, making it look like they're worn and it isn't the cleanest of paint. After this, if you got any red on any areas you didn't want to, take your base colors, in this case chocolate brown, and clean up those edges. Now I'm going to be taking yellow and adding the stripe she has on her knee pad. Being a lighter color going over a dark one, this will take several thin coats, but take your time and let the coats dry. Now let's begin work on the chest piece. For this, she has a red and white stripe pattern in the upper left. So start with a nice thin red line, and then try and evenly space another red line. What I do here is pick where I want this design to end, so I try to stripe in the bottommost part of where I want paint. Then I'll thicken the line up until I get it to the thickness I want, working my way upwards. Thus, my whole design is framed in where I need it. Now we'll go back to that purple that we were using, Vallejo's Violet, and we will frame in the rest of this side of the chest. After this chest plate, the designs are only going to get tougher on the shoulder pads, so if you need a breather, take one, and while you're doing that, hit that subscribe button down below. We'll take our yellow and we'll dot in this little centerpiece on her chest armor. Follow that up with framing in the right side with some more of the purple. Now, you don't have to paint the armor in the specific order that I did. Naturally, you could paint the yellow bits together and then the purple bits. I was just working my way up the model. And now for the Rebel Phoenix logo that she has, I took that orange brown and added yellow together until I got a color that I thought was similar to the one in the box. I roughed in the Phoenix logo by making a line down the center and then a rough outline of it underneath. Then I take the red that we were using and try and frame it in and clean it up a little bit. Now this logo is extremely small and has a lot of detail, so I'm just going for the generic shape and trying to frame it in nicely to give it some cleaner lines. You'll see at a distance it looks a lot better. After I was content with the logo on her chest, I went to paint the stripes on her undershirt. For this, I used neutral gray. The model presents some nice raised edges to show you exactly where the pattern is. Don't forget to include the spots under the arms. Now for the gauntlets, I wanted a more metallic look, so I went back to the lead belcher. If you'd like a little more flat look, you can use the sky gray or a neutral gray and remove the metal flake from it. Then I took that yellow and mixed it with the orange brown again and stippled in the elbow pads. Now it's time to add some paint splatter. I went back to the sponge and went with purple this time. After the purple, I went with red, and then followed that up with a teal color that I made from blue and green with white to lighten it up for a brighter hue. Now I did what I would consider the hardest part of this model. I started out by roughing in what would be a checker pattern along the border on this shoulder pad. If anybody knows a better, easier way to do a checker pattern, please let me know down in the comments. Even I can use pointers on this. So with this atrocious checkerboard pattern I have roughed in here, I took the yellow and orange-brown mixture and started putting the spot on her shoulder pad, trying to cover as much of it as I could. After several coats and allowing ample drying in between, I finally got a nice patch that actually doesn't look that bad. After that, I took what rough edges I had and tried to clean them up a little bit with white. It's not perfect, but the effect works. Next, I cleaned up all the edges around the shoulder pad with black. Then, I took that dark red color that we used on the helmet, and I began to paint the stripes on her shoulder pad. I started with 3 horizontal lines, trying to make them as nice and clean as possible, and then I connected the bottom 2 lines with a vertical one. After I threw the lines in, I actually ended up going back a little bit with that yellowish color and cleaned them up even more. I used it to make sure all of the edges horizontally lined up and that the widths between the lines were a little more uniform. Now onto this little collarbone bracket. For this, I threw a wet and sloppy coat of red on. I thinned the paint down because next I'm going to add purple and mix it together. Taking the violet paint, I stippled it into the red and randomly kind of pushed it around. Then I dried my brush off and used it to blend the two together in a random pattern, making it look like it was kind of crudely painted like she had it. Next, I went back to the yellowish color and lightened it up even more with more yellow and painted in the other side of her collarbone and the other shoulder pad. Now for the minty green color I'm adding here, I used the same color that I had custom made for her gauntlets. I'm going to put it down as a big circle to have a background to paint the owl design that she has on her shoulder pad. After that, I took a blue and mixed it with a lot of white to get a custom baby blue type color, and I'm going to frame in the body of the owl. For this, I do a generic teardrop type shape, tapering it towards the back right where the tail would be. After that, I take my violet and I try and frame it in using as thin of lines as possible. Now, if you look at the actual design in the cartoon or on the box, it's a pretty sloppy hand-drawn owl, so don't be afraid if yours looks just a little bit messy. Then I go to Sky Gray and blotch in the face. Once again, not trying to be too perfect, as it's a hand-drawn owl that's drawn crudely in the cartoon and on the box. After that, I take Violet and I dabble in just a little dot here and there to represent the beak and the 2 eyes. Again, it's not a picture-perfect owl, but from a distance it looks like the design. Finally, I complement the other little collarbone guard here with 2 purple stripes. Now on to the weapons. For this, the guns are easy, they're black, so all I do is add a baby blue color to the faceplates on the side here. Using the edge of my brush, I paint only the raised edges. During this step too, I realized that I had missed the little guards on her hands, so what I did there was threw some of that yellow-orange at it and did more of the sponging splatter effect. Now onto the Darksaber. For the Darksaber, I take white, and using the side of my brush, I run it along the top edge of the sword first, painting it a solid white. Then, along the bottom edge of the blade, I will do the same, trying to catch just that little 45-degree angle that's cut into it. With the blade outlined, I thin my white down even more and try to make little lightning patterns. Now, the key here is to make them random. If you put any sort of actual pattern into it, it will look odd and out of place. So try to make them as random as possible. And there you have it. Overall, I'd say it looks pretty good. Now, it's not winning any awards, but for tabletop standard, I'd say it's going to look great. Put on the helmet and add a base to it. If you're looking for base ideas, boy, are you in luck. Check out the link above. Looking for exactly what's in this mess of a palette? Good news. If you join my Patreon, I have every single color listed and exactly where I put them on the model in an easily downloadable PDF format. That will be available on all of my videos going forward. Alright guys, I know that was a long one, but thanks for sticking in there. If you're still here, a big thank you. I appreciate it. If you liked the video, let me know down in the comments below. And if you want to support the channel, there's plenty of ways you can do it. The number one way, subscribe, so that way you catch every one of my videos as soon as they're released. Also, I have a Patreon. Shout out to my 2 patrons currently, Hal and Tim. If you want to be like them and support the channel, I've got several different options there to keep producing content and help me out. I really appreciate it. Otherwise, like, comment below, and most importantly, share it with a friend. If there's something else you want to see, or there's something you liked and didn't like about the video, put it in the comments. Let me know. And until next time, guys, keep on creating.